We can leave this gate open for now too.
There's Goose walking on the green line.
So, I'm going to loosen up these poles. And their food is on the other side of this little gray coop. And so, hopefully, we'll feed them. And then while they're feeding, we'll bring these down and make a small enclosure. And then I'll be able to grow them.
Okay. You do that and I'll stand over here and take it.
No way. No way. We're just going to step over here.
Like I'm going through a wrestling match.
It is, right? Yeah. All right. Step in the ring. We can have that 10 for Stuck in the TV. Alright. And, yeah. So maybe now you can take this post.
Gotcha.
Want me to lift these up while you guys go?
And,
Non-threatening.
Make sure you get it on you.
We'll get over there.
Wait, let me flip this. I'll give you this one. Come on. There we go. Reach the other side. Hold on. Uh-oh. You're gonna have to help her back out when she grabs it.
you're the one I want right here. You guys are. Come on.
Alright, you won't come out of here.
Alright, awesome. Okay. Would you just, yeah, push them on the ground. Yeah, that's fine.
Get another one.
No, put them
No,
in.
I'll step over.
Stick them in.
If you would push them in the ground, that'll keep them where they are until I'm ready to
There we
let them
go.
back out. That was less stressful than it could have been.
Yeah.
So, this guy's been our dominant male. I'm pretty sure he's a male. But before I kill him, I want to make sure that he's a male. And these guys are born this year, so the females aren't laying eggs yet. I'm just going off of different ways that they behave to kind of tell who's a male and who's a female. You got enough light with the video?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So see, I saw this on a video. I got his head tucked in my armpit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got him on his back. And that way his wings are kind of disabled where they can't reach out and smack me around. And learned this off of YouTube too, and hopefully I'm getting it right. We're gonna open up that vent. And part of the trick is to push his tail back. And then open up that vent. And oh boy, well, that wasn't subtle at all. So fantastic. Last time, man, I struggled to get that penis to show up. That's a goose penis.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you very much.
Now we all have seen that.
You can see there, like a corkscrew.
Yeah.
Like a pig.
That was the most clear job of sexing the goose that I've done so far. It's right away. Easy breezy. So, Let's try to see how I'm going to get his head in the right position here. They want, with this tool that I'm using, they want his head bent down like this so that you can get into where you need to get. You feel the back of the head and there's a drop off. There's a soft spot right behind the bump, and then there's a drop off. A little spot where you can put this. Okay? You're gonna, sorry buddy, you did a good job defending your flock. It's time to go on greener pastures. Now what we're supposed to do is pop it in there, angled upwards, and turn it like a key. And then I'm trying some different angles because I noticed that first angle didn't work the first time. Ow, he is scratching me. You've got a nice tender spot where you're scratching me under my arm, aren't you? Ah.
Your hand here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Big help.
Yep.
Now that feels more like disorganized, like a death fit. And his eyes are closing.
Oh yeah.
Yep, you got the kicks now.
And I don't think he's
That feels like
alive, even though he's moving, right?
Gonna keep his feet off.
I think you got
I'm
it
just
that time.
making sure that I'm really killing him because I don't want to prolong anything for him. So, whatever was in there between the brain and the spinal cord is severed now. This is a tool called the Finisher, made by a company called Adrenoline, and I don't think I'm doing an exemplary job of using it. This is only my second trial, and this isn't the model that's intended for geese. They had sold out of those, so I'm using the model that's intended for ducks.
I think that worked.
I think it works. So I'm gonna see if he stops the movements now.
Tell by the amount of blood and color, you got a good stick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's death.
Okay. And I've got some, hopefully he's done twitching. I'm pretty sure he's dead. See, we got it, he's dead.
Yep.
All right.
Got your video.
So now I want to wrap up his feet because I'm going to hang him while I bleed him, and I just take a little circle of rope and leave fall out while we're working on him, bleeding him and plucking him for the next maybe hour. And hang him by, and you can see the feathers from the last job. Get the bucket out of the way here. Just gonna try to find those jugular veins, arteries, or the equivalent that a goose has. Try to find that. Where is it, little buddy? I might need to pull back more feathers. Could be the problem because these feathers will dull your knife. I haven't found your artery yet, have I, bud? You might get your head clean off before we cut that artery. At least he's dead already.
That worked good.
I mean, the thing about bleeding them is you're putting them through all this, right, while they're alive.
Yeah,
I'm glad he's
like
already
it
dead. I'm
Yeah.
struggling to cut his artery. And I just sharpened this knife, but maybe I didn't do a good job.
When you're cutting through something like that, a swoop blade
Oh,
that has a good belly on it, you put all the pressure on that belly and rake it.
Oh, okay. I mean, I wonder if my pocket knife wouldn't just do a better job here. I'm gonna switch knives soon if I can't find one to cut it. The gravy train. I feel like we're already cut through skin. Here we go. There's one of them. That only went into the skin, didn't it? There we go. Okay, so this is not a clean job. I mean, you gotta wear your dirty jeans and get ready to get your hands dirty, because it's not all pretty like you want it to be. So it should be kind of like draining out, and so I don't think I really got it yet. Maybe my pocket that's on the step there, maybe that'll work.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of feather. There you go.
There. That's better.
Mm-hmm.
Dark red blood.
Yeah, apparently the meat tastes better and lasts longer if you get the blood out, so.
Yeah, the quicker and better the bleed, the better the meat.
Yeah, that's what I've been reading is like, don't skip the step of bleeding the animal.
No. So even on a larger animal like a pig, I
Uh-huh.
straddle them with my knees and work where their heart is.
Uh-huh.
To try to push more of that blood out.
Oh, yeah, maybe I should do that here, you know? Just like, work it down. And, you know, it's warm for November, so there will be flies here in a little while. Doesn't take them long to smell this and come by. I just figure I'm gonna get this bird right in the freezer, and right from the freezer I'm gonna cook the parts. So I'm not too worried about. I do as quickly as I can, but I'm not gonna rush and stress out about the flies.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we're there on that. And you know, the first thing I do in the house is I take the head off. So if I could take the head off out here, I might as well. Let's see what you got here, buddy. There's their trachea. You can tell by those cartilage rings and how tough of a structure it is. The esophagus is going to be more gooey. That's probably the esophagus right there. And I think the trachea too is one thing that sort of dulls your knife as you're trying to cut through here. So I'm just exploring with the knife to see where we're going to find ligaments that would get cut through, and then you find those ligaments, and then you can take the head off once you get to the ligaments that are in the spinal cord.
And when you're cutting too with your knife,
Yeah.
you get a quick trick from hunting camp.
Yeah, I need tricks. I need all the
You
tricks.
hold your knife when you're cutting through something.
Yeah.
Put your thumb on top. That's your power finger,
Okay.
and you leverage off of that. And
Oh, okay. That
Good.
makes sense. There we
there you
go.
go.
Okay. Now,
Beautiful.
so I put a bucket out here because there's going to be parts that come off that there's no need to bring them inside. And I also, you know, part of my setup is just to get a pot of warm water. Here, the feathers are really going to dry out your fingers. And once your fingers are dried out, then it's like you lose all the strength that you have for pulling the feathers out. So when my fingers get dried out, then I just dip them in water. And that really helps with the plucking. The thing I've noticed about plucking is it takes a while to learn what the right size handful of feathers is. If you try to grab too much, you get nothing. If you just getting one feather at a time, you'll be here all day. So there's like a pinch size amount that works for my hand. Probably everybody's hand is different. And I try to go against the way that the feather is coming out. That seems to get them out the quickest. The first few birds I did, I had a little paper bag out here, and I was going to save all the feathers and make a pillow. I don't know how it's done that people separate. Even on the breast, you've got this down that's wonderful for pillows, and you've got these outer feathers that are meant for waterproofing the bird, and they've got the little part that they stick in by, and you don't want that in your feather, cause in your pillow, because it's going to be poking you. So I'm not really sure how to make good use of these feathers yet. So they're just getting wasted at this point. And I just drop them on the ground and I come back later and rake them up.
Put them in your soil.
Huh?
Put them in your soil.
You put them in the soil, I put them in the compost, so they get to the soil eventually, just like the bones. You know, after the bones make a bone broth, they go in the compost. The head's gonna go in the compost, the intestines, the feet. So it all returns. Now I just tore the skin there. So maybe I'm being a little too aggressive with the pulling these feathers. But I like to have the skin on for there's a lot of fat in the skin, and goose fat is one of the best things about a goose. And the last time I cooked a breast, I researched on, Google, whatever, YouTube, how to pan sear a goose breast. And with that, you're supposed to have the skin on it because you're going to cook it in its own fat. So to me, it's worth the time to pluck it instead of skinning it. But I can totally understand. See, my hands are dry, and now they're like mostly just sliding past the feathers. So I'm gonna just wet my fingers a little bit and get a better grip on those feathers. And one thing I forgot to set up, which we'll use later, is a propane blowtorch. When you do this for about 45 minutes or an hour and there's still like feathers, and you get your pliers out and you can't get those feathers out with your pliers or tweezers or anything, I mean, it's time to just burn the rest of those feathers down and try not to cook the skin. So we're at the point where I've picked most of what I can pick. I could kind of sit here and slowly, one by one, pick all the down feathers that are left. But we can also, if I can figure out how this works this time. Oh, shoot. Okay. I think I have to. Kind of singe those feathers off, and be careful not to cook the skin. So you go over an area, but you don't stay there. You just sweep across it. Try to singe those little down feathers off. Maybe go over it a few times. If it didn't burn all the way to the skin, just go back over it. And you can see here some areas where I tore the skin. I wish I hadn't have done that, but that's all right. All the little down feathers. Sometimes you see the skin like shrink a little bit, and that's telling me that I'm starting to cook the skin, so I back off because I don't want to cook the skin. All this is going in the freezer, and you want it to be fresh in the freezer and ready to cook. Just run over here. Smells like burned hair. And you can just kind of brush those off after they burn up. You can just take your hand and brush them off. Getting these arms are a little. Turn the bird around. Spot here right over this is the back of the bird, so this spot here right over the tail, I guess it's some kind of a oil gland that they use in their preening. They grab some of that oil with their beak and then they spread it on the rest of their wings. So when you hit that, all that oil is going to light up like a candle, like a little lamp. I might have to put it out. Gently hit that again. There we go. Skin's starting to shrink, so I backed off because I don't want to cook the skin. I just want to singe the feathers. So I can brush them off and I don't end up eating feathers. gets on the feathers. So I found this part from the equivalent of its elbow down to its wrist. I found that part pretty much impossible to pull the feathers off. So I'm going to cut that part off if I can find the ligaments, cut through them and take that joint apart. And just go ahead and skin that part. There is a little bit of meat and then there's a bone. And you know, any bones are going to give us nutrition in the stock. So I want that piece, but I don't want to cook it as a separate part because all the feathers that are on there. Oops, getting stuck on that. Come on, thing. And then this end piece of the wing, I'm just going to pull the skin off since I can't get the feathers out of the skin. Trying to find those ligaments to separate these bones. And there it is. Okay, so this piece here, I'm just gonna see if I can get the skin off because there's a little meat and there's bone that's good. And if I can't get the skin off, it'll just go in the compost. This part here definitely is just all feathers, so that's just gonna go in the compost. This little joint right, this little bone here, I might try to save to put in the stock pot. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's the top and what's the bottom, but if you got your feet, you look at the feet, that's the top of the foot, so here's the breast. And also you got a tail back here, so that's the back. Alright, now, the way I do this, because I'm still a newbie, is I watch this awesome chef on YouTube talking about how to butcher a goose. So his first step is to take the neck off. And he does that right above the breast. And come around, you're going to see that esophagus again. And this is a fine time to just pull that esophagus out because, like I said, those cartilage rings dull your knife. I don't really see a reason to cut through it. And go ahead around. And we're going to save the neck is either going to go into the stock pot with the carcass for making soup stock, bone broth type of thing, or we can put the neck in confit, I think is how you say it. It's a way of cooking the animal in its own fat. The neck can go with that, but the skin of the neck, I'm going to be experimenting with stuffing that for sausage. So I'll be taking the skin, pulling it off of the neck like a sleeve, and setting that aside. Now this knife keeps finding bones, so I'm trying not to, I'm never going to be able to cut through this bone with a knife, so I'm trying to find the places where the bones come apart and I can cut through ligaments. Just a little bit of trial and error. Working it out. Where'd it go? I just don't have the strength to quite break that and find my ligaments. Searching, I'll find them. Right there. goes the knife. Good thing it don't land on my foot. Come on. And then it might be right in the middle of the vertebra, so where I want to be. Of course, the guy in the video does this lickety split. He takes a knife, he goes bam like that, and off comes the whole neck. There we go. Find a place where you can get some vertebrae apart from each other, and then you can cut through the ligaments. There we go. Now it's becoming clear where we can cut. And I forgot to get out my Ziploc baggies. So, look at all the nice fat that's in the skin of the neck. Try to cut down the fascia there and disconnect that skin from the neck muscle and the neck vertebrae. Get that skin off. All right, that's for the stock pot or confit. And this, we can take out the esophagus, and this can be our casing for sausage. Got started. Esophagus out. I think the esophagus is just going to go in the compost, which right now is the job of the sink. Okay. So while I'm figuring out what's going where, I don't want everything exposed to the air. I'm going to put stuff right away into Ziploc baggies and get things in the freezer as quickly as possible. There's our sausage casing on the neck. Get rid of that. I'm watching a video called How to Prepare and Butcher a Goose with Byatt. And he's a chef. And I've watched him several times while I do this. And I really find that helpful. Sharpen this knife again. Could be watching somebody who, I mean, he does the whole bird in like less than 15 minutes. So I imagine he's done it many, many times. And really knows what he's doing. But I need to stop and start and stop again and start again. So we're working on taking off the legs. So we cut in the front here where the leg meets the belly to get that open. And then we're going to turn the bird over. And we're going to keep cutting back. Don't do this. Don't cut towards yourself like I'm doing. I just don't know what I'm doing. We're going to keep, this knife is just not sharp. Keep cutting. There we go. Back towards the spine. And then he takes this leg and basically dislocates it from the hip socket to pull it back behind the bird. That's always a little bit of a trick, but I'm working on it. Yeah. Okay. So in the front here, you want to open up. So here's the side that's not done yet. You want to get sort of in that groin line to open it up. Then you move to the back. See if I can do this time. And we're trying to dislocate that hip. Yeah. Push that leg back. We're going to come right along the spine. Here's the spine right here. So we're going to disconnect that leg right at the spine. So I'm still learning, you know, how to tighten up the skin as I cut. Here comes. Then we've got a line where the leg meets the spine, and you just cut right down on there, and that keeps all that meat connected to the leg. You come in above the hip socket. Now that you've dislocated it, you can cut through that hip socket. And go down where that leg meets the spine. And that way you save all this skin, so when you cook the leg, you can cover it with the skin and it can cook in its own fat. I'm going to cut off this foot too, because that's not a part I'm going to use. I think I'm going to bend it back to find the ligament. There. Bend it the other way to find the ligaments that are in the front of the leg. Come on. And that part, for me, is going to go in the compost. I'm sure there's something really good you can do with that, but I haven't gotten that advanced yet. All right, I'm going to get a bag for legs. I'm going to put our legs in the bag. That one. The other one here. So maybe after a little practice, I'll do better on this leg. Find where the leg meets the belly. There's a crease there. Cut along that crease. And I'm doing better this time because I'm keeping the fat with the leg, so I found a better line to cut on this time. Come a little bit back. I mean, you can even see a little indentation. That's kind of what you want to follow with your knife, is where the leg meets the body. All right, here goes that trick where we dislocate the hip. Oh, I did better that time. Yeah, got it. Okay. If you do that, it'll make it easier to cut through your hip joint. To get this leg off of the body. Yeah. Get through that hip joint and then I'll be smooth sailing. There it is. So you're trying to cut to keep all these muscles that connect the leg to the spine. You're trying to cut right where everything meets the spine. Alright, these muscles in here, you want to cut them close to the spine so you're not wasting any meat. There's another leg. Oh, we gotta take the foot off. Let's find that ligament. So as you go around that knee, I guess it is, You're going to try to find the ligaments. Take the knee apart. And take that foot out of the way. And there's another, see, when you keep all that skin around the leg, you can put it in a pan like this and cook the meat under the skin. I'll keep the meat moist and keep it cooking in its own fat. So next we're going for the wishbone. This is the wishbone of the last goose that I've butchered. And we take the wishbone out. Here's the breast. Here's the head side. There's the esophagus. We're going to peel back the skin. Try not to cut through the skin, but just remove it from the chest a little bit so you can see where the wishbone is. Okay, not sure about this knife, but so this area here, there's the wishbone. So we're going to try to pierce on in there and follow along that bone. Take this out, and then we'll be able to get the breast out. See my knife coming through under the wishbone? Cut it wherever you find it's attached. Let's see. Let's cut it back as far as we can and do the other side and see what happens. Alright. Sorry, I'm getting in the way of the camera here, but get him behind that wishbone. Got it loose enough yet. Yeah. There we go. Cut around the underside and the front of the wishbone. You're disconnecting it from the breast, so you'll be able to get your breast out. One good piece, and I broke it. Too bad. I won't have a nice one like this one. Probably should have cut back a little further, but seems like the rib and the shoulder blade was in my way. So that's gonna go in the stock pot just so that I can make use of this little bit of meat on here. Just with, same with the rib cage and the spinal cord. That's all gonna go in the stock pot. All right. Get ready to do the breast. So we find that breastbone, try to tighten up the skin on either side, cut towards the breastbone, open up the skin, and pull this skin back too so you can cut it, because you want to keep as much skin with the breast. Same with the leg. The more skin you keep with it, the more skin you can use to cover the meat when you cook it. Alright, now that we're down to the bone and where the muscle meets the bone, we're going to go along that attachment. Cut in towards the bone, saving as much of the breast as you can. All the way to the bottom of the sternum. Get down here and you're going to come sideways now. And that's where it is. Skin with it. Can you see okay with the video?
Mm-hmm.
See under the skin here, you got all this fat. If that fat stays with the breast, then you can roast the breast right in its own fat. So try to get down all the way underneath the breast. I guess it's like us, where we have pec major and pec minor. So I'm calling this pec major. Underneath the breast, you've got this kind of like our pec minor, and he calls that the fillet. So he actually separates them and sets the fillet to the side and cooks it separately. I guess it doesn't need as much time to cook because it's more tender. So you can see we got under the breast, and now it's just the ribs and the muscles that are along the ribs and between the ribs. And over here we got our breast. So here's the fillet. So we're gonna, since that's already wanting to come apart, we're gonna set that aside in its own little bag. We'll need a small bag for those. That should be fine. We'll put the fillets in here. And we'll label those and we'll learn about how to cook the fillet. But here's the breast coming off. You can see it's sort of like a steak. And the whole bird is red meat. So it is very much like a steak. And then he's talking about coming under here, keeping all this skin and fat with the breast. Try not to cut through the wing muscle. Because then here you're coming back, you have the shoulder blade, you have the start of the wing, still a little bit of hair. I might come back and with the blowtorch again. But here you get this joint where the wing is meeting the torso, like our shoulder. So I'm going to try to keep that bone with this breast until I get it off. Keep the wing with the breast until I get the breast off. And come back here, you got this nice little juicy bit of meat that connects the wing to the shoulder blade. Keep that with it. Keep as much skin as you can with this whole complex of the breast and the wing together. Then come around the back, and it's pretty easy to see where you can cut along the spine. And take off that wing. Dislocate the shoulder to find the ligaments, so I'm not trying to cut through bone, which won't work with this knife. It'll also just dull the knife. There we go. There. Once you cut the ligament, everything starts moving, and you know you got it at a spot that you're not losing any meat and you're not breaking any bones. Surprised we didn't have any flies outside. I got lucky. Alright, I feel good about this. We got the breast and we got the wing and we got all the skin that goes with it. And then pretty soon we're going to separate the breast from the wing so we can cook the breast a separate way, but I'm going to go ahead and take off the other breast before we do that. Alright. Cut along the breastbone. There's the fillet underneath the breast meat. pull that out of our way. And now we're going to keep this skin with the breast and cut along. And we've gotten to the bottom of the breastbone, so we're going to come along the bottom of the rib cage. Alright, I'm hitting some bones, so I need to see where my muscle line is. Okay. And now you can see where the breastbone comes down. We separate it from the breastbone. You're going to cut along that bottom insertion of the breast where it attaches to the bottom of the rib cage here. Let me turn this body around. And you see as you pull it back, there's just like fascia attaching it to it. Sometimes you just are taking your knife and detaching a little bit of fascia and pulling it back. But sometimes you're cutting where the bone actually attaches to the meat. So you want to get as close to the bone as you can to keep that meat with your cut. Under that armpit, and how did I get to the other side? No, we didn't. We came around. Not under the armpit. We came around. We got all this together with it. Let's cut into there. There we go. Let's get that shoulder blade off with it. There. Get your knife between the shoulder blade and the spine. See how they're getting between the shoulder blade and the spine there. And then up here we just have connection to the neck. Kind of like our trapezius coming down to the shoulder blade from the neck. What we're going for. Yeah. Okay. Alright. Got that shoulder joint. Now you watch these professionals, they don't put their knife down every 3 seconds like I do, but I want to know where I'm going. I'm not as familiar with where the knife is going if I can't see it. And I want to know that I'm keeping my cuts of meat as one piece instead of tearing them apart. So I stop and inspect, and I stop and I look, what's next? If I keep pushing my knife through, where am I going? Okay, so this part here's the breast, and then pretty soon we're going to take it apart from this wing. So it may be hard to tell what's what here, but this is where we took the breast off. So this is the front of the bird, and it's got this sort of plate of a sternum, and we're going to get under that plate. So we need to cut through and get started pulling that sternum plate away from the body. Come around the other side. Oops. So I'm just cutting along the bottom of this sternum, getting it detached from the rest of the rib cage. so we can get access to the organs. And you see we've got some fat here that we're going to save. We've got the liver. So let's see if we can pull this back now, or if we have to break one rib at a time, or how that's going to work. And he does it easy breezy. I always have a little bit of difficulty getting these apart. And now we've got it open enough I can pull most of the stuff out. I'm not sure I really need to go any further than that as far as opening up the rib cage, but we'll see. So we're going to start setting fat aside, because this fat we can render down and cook with it. You can just, you know, use this, once you render it down, you can use this fat to fry things in the pan the way you do lard or olive oil or whatever. And I was talking earlier about confit, which is a way of cooking the goose in its own fat. You can use that rendered down fat to cook the goose meat. So I'm trying to pull that out of there and set it aside. And I'll put all the fat in a little bag in the freezer until I have time to render it. So what else is coming out here? The crop. Okay, we're going to cut that up. That's good meat. We're going to find the heart and the liver and set those aside. And it's nice to get all this fat in here. Fat. As I'm reaching in, getting the fat out, you know, try to be careful of where your intestines are. You don't want to puncture them. It's probably not the end of the world, but I mean, there's poop in there, so you don't really want your food to be tainted with poop. So here we have some goose fat. I'm going to get a bag and start a bag of just fat. And rendering is just slow cooking it until the liquid and the solid separate. And then the solids are going to turn into, I think they call them chitlins, is that right? Which is just like pork rinds. It's like fried little bits of solids that come out of the fat. And again, I'm just finding where the subcutaneous fat meets the muscle and trying to separate them. I'm not trying to cut through any muscle here. I'm just trying to pull off the fat. This little flap of skin over its lower belly, I'll just render that with the fat that came from inside of it. Cut it into small pieces so that your little chitlins come out in little pieces, and don't trap the fat inside, the liquid fat inside. Time to sharpen that knife so I can get the rest of that out. So here's the gizzard. I'm actually going to go around the whole inside of the rib cage and pull this whole mass of innards out, because if I start pulling one piece, I might break something. And what you really don't want to break is, chickens have it too, there's like a bile sac real close to the liver. And the stuff in there is very bitter, so you don't want it on your meat. In the video here, this guy who's this expert teaching us how to butcher a goose, he actually breaks the bile sac. And then he just wipes it off the meat and wipes down the board that he's cutting on and wipes off his equipment. So I don't think it's something to be terrified of. It's not like, oh my God, you just ruined all the meat. Just wipe it off. Carefully, there's the esophagus. That's going to go in the compost. I mean, sorry, no, that's the trachea. That's going to go in the compost. Just cutting apart the little strands that are holding my innards into the bird so I can get access to these innards. And there's the rest of the esophagus. So I pulled that out. And I'm seeing a little bit of diluted bile from the esophagus spill down to the bird, but that's not something to worry about, like if you punctured the bile sac itself. That stuff is a dark, very dense, dark green. This is just like intestinal juices that are slightly green, and I'm gonna keep that off my meat too. All right, so when you pull all this apart, we got the crop. That's the stomach that grinds all the grain and stones and stuff that they eat. They eat mostly grass, but these guys do eat some grain. So I'm gently pulling that apart from the intestines, because I know I don't want any of the intestines. I'm gonna cut the intestines away from this whole mess. Then I can get them out of the way. Of course, pull off that skin here that's connected to the end of the intestines. And there. So at the end of the intestines, you got green stuff coming out. I don't think that's bile. I think that's the digested grass. Okay. But one way or another, nobody really wants poop on their food, so we're gonna take a towel and wipe this off of our work surface. So we don't get it on anything. And that little bit of bile that came out of the esophagus, just wipe that off of there too. So there's a lot of blood, and I wonder if I could have done a better job of bleeding this animal. But I was just mentioning that I have a breast here that we're going to eat for lunch. And I had read that you should take it out of the freezer and thaw it for several days before you cook it. So I had it in the freezer, or in the fridge, for a few days thawing. And what that does is it takes a lot of that blood, leaks out of the muscle while it's thawing for a few days. So that's another way to remove the blood, is before you cook this meat, let it rest in the fridge for some days. And you see a lot of blood come out. Okay, so here's the crop. So pull this fat off, add it to the fat pile. As much as you can, you don't have to get every little thing. And there's a little bit of the esophagus that stayed with the crop. Get rid of that. And here you want to just try your best not to puncture this dark green bile sac. If in fact you want to keep this liver, which I do want to learn how to prepare goose liver, so I'm going to keep this. So the thing to do is remove as much of the connective tissue holding it to the liver as you can. Gently. Take a knife if you need to cut some of that connective tissue. Little by little you get it out to where you can see where it meets the liver. And then you cut that. So see where this meets the liver? So I want to get it to a place where I can put my knife right in there and get this out of there. So I'm still cutting back a little bit of connective tissue to get a nice clean place to put my knife between the sac and the, okay, so I got a little bit on there. So that's what you don't want. But I didn't spill it everywhere. I just got a few drops. You might want to zoom in and check out this green oozy stuff right on the board, even on my skin of my wing over here, breast and wing. Just get that off the board. It's not going to kill you, but it's bitter, and I don't know that it wouldn't hurt you if you ate a whole bunch of it on purpose. It probably would. But it just makes the meat taste bad, so you want to get as much of it off as you can if you accidentally spill it like I did. And I'm even going to just rinse this liver off because I don't know how much got on there. I'll rinse it off. Alright, there's our goose liver. Put that in a little bag. Get an organ bag going. I don't like all this plastic use. I just haven't really found an alternative. I'd love to hear of one. I definitely will take all these bags and reuse them. We reuse these bags. That's the least we can do. Alright. You can see what a strong muscle they need to like grind the grain that they eat, but also they actually eat mud and stones. That helps them break down the grass that they're eating. So we're going to cut it in half, and when we do, we find some greenness, which is probably the grass that they're eating, and some sand. They're actually out there digging in the dirt, eating sand. So I'm going to put that sand in the compost. Get this plate. Get that out of there. I don't want to rinse all of it down the sink. So get most of that out of there. And check out that tough skin on the inside of the crop. Imagine if the inside of your stomach had to grind sand. It'd have to be pretty tough. We're going to rinse that out. Get rid of as much of that as you can. And it takes this and cuts it in two. Alright, so what I'm learning is, oh, I want to sharpen my knife for this one. So we're gonna see, all this silver stuff is really tough. That's like a tendon or a ligament that's really, really tough. So we want to get rid of that. So we're gonna come down the outside. Just cut that gizzard in half, and both sides of this have that tough stuff, and the underside has more tough stuff, a different kind of tough stuff that we just can't eat. So come down and try to stay close to that silver layer so that you're not gonna waste as much meat. Because the gizzard is a muscle, and so it's meat. Try to cut off that tough stuff. Now, one of the tricks is don't go all the way to the cutting board. Turn it after that, and then you can cut down and cut off this yellow tough skin away from the muscle. Again, don't go all the way to the cutting board, because you can turn it again, a little further, turn it again, and then you can keep going and cut off the other side of the silvery tough stuff. Okay, and then because it's rounded and your knife is not as much of a shape to match it, you got little pieces on the end. Look for any more little bits of silvery, shiny, tough stuff. Trim those off. And that's half of your gizzard right there. You can slow cook it, you can comb feed it in its own fat, you can slice it into small pieces and fry it. People like to eat the gizzard different ways. But all this tough stuff that's wrapped around it, compost. And we're going to do the same thing with the other half. Alright, so lay it flat down with the shiny sides up. And then you're going to try to show you this here. Cut away the silvery stuff. Don't go all the way to the cutting board, so you can turn. Cut off the yellow tough skin that's on the inside. Cutting that away from the meat. And don't go all the way to the bottom there. And around. And cut off the silver part. So I wasn't as exact with this one. I think I wasted more meat cutting this half of the gizzard. There's a big difference in how much I was able to save. But you know, if you really love gizzard, you can come back and try to get some more of that and be more exact about only cutting out the tough stuff that you can't eat. Alright. So let's put that. Let's put that with the neck because we're gonna confit that with the neck. Alright, check this out. Way up in the carcass here we have a heart, obviously. It didn't come out with the rest of the innards, so we're gonna reach up. We're gonna break it free of the fascia that's holding it in place. Pull that heart out. I'm gonna rinse out the blood because by the time you freeze this and thaw it and get ready to cook it, if you haven't rinsed out the blood, it's gonna be all clotted in there. Might as well rinse it out now when it's easy. I mean, sticking your fingers down into the, we have atria and ventricles. I don't know if they have both. It feels like just the ventricle. But get your fingers down in there and try to clear out the blood. So that when you're ready to cook a heart, it's all already cleaned out. I'm gonna put that in with the liver and learn how to cook those organs together. All right, so now keep cutting all this fat off. Goose has a lot of fat down at their belly area. So we want to get all that fat. And sometimes there'll be some fat with this skin. So I am seeing some fat with the skin on the back. It's worth it to me to take the time to cut that off and render that fat down. For cooking. Now, whatever little bits of meat and fat that I'm leaving on the carcass, it won't be wasted because this whole carcass will go in the stock pot. And the nutrients from the bones will cook into the water. And once you're done cooking it and you bring it down to cool enough where you can handle it, then you can pull off any little bits of random meat. And those can go in your sausage, or you can leave them in the stock as a soup, or you can use all of those, that little bit of bone, you can use all of it, a little bit of meat that's on the carcass between the ribs and along the spine. You can use all of that. It would be really ridiculous to try to get at it now with a knife, but you cook this whole thing and it just falls off the bone and it becomes easy to pull off. So this is the skin from the belly. I don't want to be eating this. That's the cloaca. So I'm going to cut that out. Maybe some people eat it. I have no idea. That's the vent. Penis is going to be up in there. Not my thing. But all this skin I'll cut into little pieces and I'll render it with the fat. So that's going to go in the bag with the fat. Alright. So here's the breasts. Looks like a steak. Okay. And you can kind of see where it's connected. So I'm going to cut it through this fat. I'm going to cut this fascia that connects it right here, and then get that wing off. Cutting through as little meat as I can. Alright, getting closer to that shoulder joint. See what I did. I just stop and look just in case I'm going through more meat than I have to. Give me a chance to reroute. Okay. Now when we get to this point, to me it looks like this piece of muscle belongs with the wing, not the breast. So I'm going to cut between there, and that's just fat. That'll be real easy to cut. Alright, now we got our wing here. And since we've saved the skin, again, we can tuck that skin around this wing, put it in a pan, and roast it where it's going to keep the moisture in and cook in its own fat. Now I got this breast piece. And you can see that there's more skin than we need to top the breast. And what we do when we pan roast a breast is we just want enough skin that it's laid out on the top. So sometimes when you're doing this, you'll take the skin and you'll slide it this way and you'll cut, and then it'll slide the other way and you've cut too much off. So kind of err on the side of leaving too much skin, but this giant bit of extra and this giant bit of extra can all be cut into small pieces and rendered down for cooking fat. So we're just gonna lay it on there, cut it off. Put those pieces of skin in with the other skin for rendering. And so I might take this, instead of cutting here, I might slide the whole thing down and cut here, just so I'm not accidentally cutting so much that there's not enough fat to cook the breast in. Take that extra and put it to rendering. And let's see how that's going to set in the pan. This piece is going to be extra too. So slide the meat towards it so you're not accidentally cutting too much. Pulling it, I'm kind of pulling it tight with my fingers and my thumb so that I can cut. And then there's extra. So there's just the breast, and we want to take and cut out this sinewy, silvery piece here because that is too tough to eat. So the way I've seen him do that is, this fellow that I'm learning from on YouTube, is to kind of cut this out too, so you can see where the silvery stuff starts. And I'm figuring out as I go here. There's, you know, I'm trying not to cut towards my hand, but sometimes I'm not really finding the way to do that. Chime in anytime if you guys have ideas. But I'm just trying to get started, and then I can pinch this up and cut under it. I'm cutting really gently because my fingers are close in there, and I'm just trying to peel back this little silver piece here, if you can see that, and cut it off, so that when you roast a breast and you serve it to people, they're not having to cut this off. It's already out of the way and you've got just tender meat. I probably could have taken more of that off, right? Because you still see that really tough stuff. You just have to cut that off while you're eating it. So then we take this breast, and hopefully we have enough to kind of lay on top of it in a pan, enough skin on there to lay on top of it. And again, we're going to pull it tight with our finger and our thumb so we can score through that skin, not cutting the muscle, just cutting the skin. The idea being, if you have a cut like this, and of course this is where we were plucking and the skin got torn apart, but if you have cuts and tears like that, then when you put it in a pan and you start cooking it, the fat in the skin is going to render out, it's going to melt out into the pan, and that's going to be what it cooks in, and it's going to make this skin crispy like fried chicken. If you don't score it like this, then when you fry it in a pan, that fat can't escape and do that. So we're just making slices into the skin, but not into the muscle. Superficial slices here. Okay, that's a beautiful breast.